Call this meeting to order. Please silence any electronic devices so we're not disturbed during our meeting, and stand for the invocation. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any public comments? All speakers should have signed up in advance with the city clerk. Each speaker will please leave the podium. Please state your name and address before beginning your statement. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes. Please address your comments to the chair. Council will not engage in debate with the speaker. The speaker will start to wrap it up after the first bell. That means we have 30 seconds left. And on the second bell, unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop you so that we can give everybody a chance to have a say. So please call for the first person.
Kathy Owen.
Kathy Owen, Redfield Parkway. During the summer of 2013, we broke our water line. We opted to replace the sewer line at that time because it was old and the yard was dug up from the house to the street. On inspection by the city, we were informed we must reconfigure our sump discharge. We complied. At the time, the contractor and plumber expressed some degree of skepticism for the system. The cost ran into thousands for everything. We were given no option to just discharge the sump water in the lawn. Redfield Parkway slopes southward. During heavy rain, water collects in front of our property and flows over the curb in the area of the bubbler system, which is the sump discharge, which in turn is trying to discharge water. Two concerns: a large tree near the area may one day uproot due to all the moisture, and the ground has been sinking. Is there a guarantee the check valve on the bubbler system will never fail? Because the sump pump can run as often as every 30 seconds during wet seasons. We have gone to the additional expense of adding a sump jet and a whole house generator should the power to the sump fail. In 2001, before we could put on an addition, an engineer inspected the foundation as we had experienced some deterioration. We had to replace 70 feet of foundation damaged from groundwater and poor drainage. New drainage has resulted in the sump pump working far more often. I do not want more water dumped into the ground. The town requires retention ponds with new development in most cases. I wonder why. If your neighbor is higher than you are and already discharges gutter runoff, then adds sump discharge to the water migrates towards your property. I've read several comments from people saying that they've done this and they've discharged to the sides of their houses. Who's regulating where this water is being discharged? You've also allowed the VA hospital and new construction in that area to tie into the Redfield pump station. You need bigger pump stations. I can pass around some pictures of the bubbler system that we had to install. The flooding that happens at the driveway area, the water that floods the bubbler goes back down the bubbler. The next door neighbor's house is higher than we are. We both discharge gutter water to the slow area. If nobody regulated where he discharged his sump pump water, it would just ruin the foundation on the other side of the house. And this is an example of what we had to go through to replace 70 feet of foundation, just to give you an idea of what water does. And I thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Alicia Cow. Hi there. Normally I'm not up here, but I felt I had to come up here after getting your letter. You want to unplug my sump pump. Well, if you unplug my sump pump, it's like telling my family not to flush their toilet. Okay, I mean that's not going to work for me in my house. So after listening to all my neighbors, since your letter's gone out, they've talked about changing the system to the way you want to change it, which is dumping the water out into our lawns, and that's not a workable thing in our neighborhood. Like Kathy said, you're just throwing the water back in our basement when you dump it in the lawn. That's not going to work because our sump pumps are just going to work twice as hard to dump it back out. It's just going to be like a cycle, and it's going to ruin the foundation of the house. We have had to deal with that. We've lived there since 2003. We had to cut away some of the mold that was built up down at the foundation level for water that was seeping through. And I don't even have water being pumped into my front yard. I can't imagine if I had to do that. I think plumbers right now in the city, they're just doing whatever. I know we haven't had a plumbing inspector for a while, and I noticed you have a job opening for one. Is that true? Yeah, I saw that.
Not aware of a plumbing inspector, no.
No? You don't have a job opening
For a plumbing inspector?
No? Well, maybe we should, because we haven't had one for quite some time. And I'm not saying that your department's not doing a good job. I'm just saying that that's needed. And I think that just telling people to put water in their yard is not a good plan. And I understand that you're worried about your equipment and taxing equipment, but maybe we should look into grants or something that you can upgrade your equipment, because the pipes in the street are over 100 years old. Things changed when Main Street construction came through, and the water, something changed then. And I'm not sure when you put in all your lift stations, and there's 12 of them. I know you're always over at ours. I don't know how many you're over at all the other ones around, but ours is always, there's always some problem. So, I just think maybe you ought to look into maybe a grant of some sort that might help you upgrade your sewer, your sanitary sewer, your storm sewer. The only real option is for us to be able to go into the storm sewer then, if you don't want us in the sanitary sewer. It's an option of throwing out in the yard is not an option. So, I understand you want to work with us, but at the same token, you're kind of putting the burden on us to pay for the problem. But it's not a work. Your idea is not a good idea because it's just a Band-Aid. It's not going to solve the problem. The problem is we have too much water coming in, and maybe we need to upgrade our sewer system. So, if at all possible, if you want to hook every house up to your storm drain, we could all hook up there in the ground. That would be the only way you'd be able to do anything on Redwood Parkway. I've listened to my neighbors for 4 and 5 days now. Today, a lot of new stories came in that I didn't even know. There's some people that have hooked it up the way that you want it hooked up. And now they're having more problems than what they had earlier. So I'm not willing to add any more water to my basement. You guys have been to my house. You were there in 2013 with a surface water problem. Water was running suddenly into my house nonstop for a year. And then just like that, it was like the switch was turned off and it stopped. So we never found out where that water came from. So, as far as telling us that we have to do what you want us to do, put it out in our yard, or you're gonna fine us or whatever, I don't think that's really fair. You told a lot of people on the street that we were grandfathered in, and there's something in your code that even says that. I don't know, I think you should look into it more.
Thank you.
Don Riley.
Hi. My name is Don Freiling. I live at 6 Redfield Parkway, right in between the previous two speakers. I'd just like to say that there have been no changes to the homes on our street in the last 40 years. The way the sumps have been handled, have been grandfathered in for all that time I've been there for the 40 years. There have been other expansions that have been allowed that have added to the system, the PTSD clinic, the nursing home, the apartments, Dunkin' Donuts, even Tops in the last 40 years. They've helped cause that issue. But Batavia Downs Hotel just added 84 more units. That's like, to their footprint. That's like another whole street. And it's our problem. So perhaps the city should update the lift station instead of pushing these costs back on the residents. I, for one, the cost to remediate would be cost prohibitive, especially since I'm now on a fixed income. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Bergman.
Hi there. Good evening. Just to add on to what they were just saying before, I live at, my name is Keith Bergman. I live at 35 Redfield Parkway. And where we are, if you're upstairs at our house, you can see everything in the track, at the track. And over the last, I'm going to say about 8-9 years ago, I kind of felt like this was going to add to like a problem. The track had a garage where they stored equipment, and they more than doubled the size of that garage. And around the garage, they put all this pavement where there used to be just ground or grass growing there. So that's water that would have just run off into the ground. But with all that pavement, the water, you can see that they have at least one drain I can see from my upstairs bedroom window. And so when we have really nasty rainstorms, at least over the last 8 years, it floods the back of my yard, but mostly the neighbor right next to me, the Clarks, they've had it where their entire backyard is flooded, and that never happened before. And they've since even put up another building 3 years ago, and I just wondered if studies were done on, where all that water was going to go, because I was telling different people I learned a lot from a hurricane that happened over the summer in Houston, where they said, the scientists down there said they could see this problem coming up because so much infrastructure was built, so many malls and parking lots, and there was not water, the places for the water to run off. So I think a lot of those things added to the problem. As they were just saying before, we haven't had new buildings put up on our street. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
James Owen.
Good evening, my name is James Owen, 2 Redfield Parkway. I'm here to defend, not the word defend, to encourage our neighbors to get relief from the city on this situation. In other words, we have water and we have a sump pump area that can be maybe enlarged to control this problem. Also, maybe down the road we might have to put in a new sewer line so we can take all this overflow. Now again, obviously it's M-O-N-E-Y, it's money that's going to do it, but I understand that part. But I don't want to use the word punish my neighbors, but that's what you're doing. You're causing them extra money for something that, under the grandfather clause, that they have been doing without hurting the residents, without hurting the city. Now the problem is the city is getting a situation which they have to repair that pump many times, and maybe the pump is burning out, maybe they have to get a new pump. And this is what we're trying to prevent, the neighbors being hurt. Not to hurt the city, but maybe you can get a grant so that everybody can be a winner in this situation. So we appreciate you folks listening. I know you can't make any comments now, but we hope that you will listen and help the people, not just on the Batavia Redfield, but other places in the city must be having some of the same problems. And I know that's what happens when you have a great city like the city of Batavia. You just have to help out the neighbors. Thank you very much for listening, and good luck, and hope you make the right decision. Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay, before we respond to that, Matt wanted to just clarify some things from the other side of the perspective. You go ahead, Matt.
Thank you, Council. Just a little background. The ordinance prohibits stormwater being pumped into the sanitary sewer, and that ordinance has been on the books. I went back as far as 1966. I just couldn't find any ordinance that's older than that. So it is not anything that is new, and the existing ordinance does in fact say that if the system was in place prior to that chapter being enacted, it is grandfathered in. Again, this goes back to 1966. And the grandfathering clause is also exclusive if there is a detrimental effect onto the sanitary sewer system. So this initiative really began about a year ago. We looked at an issue we were having on Bank Street. We contacted the homeowners, much as we did, I think it's probably an identical letter to be quite honest, and asked for appointments so we could meet with them, try to determine some reasonable solutions as low cost as we possibly could to eliminate as much of that stormwater discharge or surface water discharge from the sanitary sewer. And since then, we have not had an issue. It doesn't mean forever, but since that initiative, the issues we've had on Bank Street have essentially gone away. So this year, we moved on to another area we've had issues in the past, that is the Redfield Parkway, Bogue Avenue. Both of those streets discharge into what we refer to as the West Main Lift Station. Some people call it the Redfield Lift Station. And as recently as this past fall, there was a time during a heavy rain event. Snow melt is another issue where we have the secondary rain event, where that station becomes overwhelmed with the amount of discharge, and the pumps start to flood out. They cannot keep up. And then in addition, we had a pump failure. So there's two pumps in the system that is designed for a single pump to handle the load. But even with two pumps running, that system will start to back up. And if there's a pump failure, again, the problem only becomes worse, which was a case we had this past fall. Now, the importance to try to remove some of that water is that if there's a complete failure, the person with the lowest basement is the one who's going to first see the backup. It's going to come back into the connection into the house with dirty water. And granted, an awful lot of it is sump pump water, but it's not all sump pump water. And we're trying to protect the residents from having that type of a failure occur into their basement. So again, we try not to be draconian about it. The request is for people to make an appointment. We will come, have those discussions. We're trying to offer as low cost of solutions as possible. Quite often it is an over the surface discharge rather than requiring a direct connection into the storm sewer, which if there's not a catch basin nearby, results into trying to dig into the street area, things of that nature. So again, we're trying to find low cost solutions along with that. The code also allows for, if there is no reasonable solution, that the sump pump can remain in the sanitary sewer. So right at this station, again, we're trying the information gathering, trying to give people alternatives. We're not setting hard deadlines with the people that have been contacted. I believe the recommendation is try to find a solution by this summer and see what we can work with to come forward as a solution that improves the system as a whole. Enlarging the sanitary pumps is not a solution to the problem. Again, it is clean water. It is not supposed to be entering the sanitary sewer system. And in fact, it is a requirement of back 30 years ago when the wastewater plant was built, and the federal funding and state funding that comes along with that requires your sewer code to specifically prohibit those costs. They are not interested in funding a wastewater plant to treat clean surface water. Going back to the Main Street reconstruction, the storm sewer line that went across Main Street and discharged out by the River Street Bridge was enlarged to try to convey that storm load much more than what it did previously. Again, going back into the late 80s, early 90s, the lower end of Redfield would flood, have significant standing water. That has been improved to a great deal. I don't see that as being a regular occurrence as it was going back into the late 80s. So I understand people's concerns and also understand their requests. And again, we're trying to do this in the most reasonable approach as we can, and also trying to really protect their basements from the potential backup. And so as we can do this, if we can eliminate half of the sump pumps from that direct connection, it probably makes the issue go away. As far as the pump station itself, as a matter of maintenance course, we visit each pump station twice a week, which may put out when they see that station being visited. Of course, it's right on Main Street, so it's there for everyone to see when the crews are there doing their maintenance. However, during high water events and heavy rains, heavy melt-offs, quite often our crews are there because the station is flooding out and we have to be there with standby bypass pumps so that if there is a failure or it continues to go back, we can either bypass pump with a gas pump, or if worst case scenario, we would have to pump out of that into a storm sewer and discharge directly into the creek, which creates a whole other level of issues that go along with it. Again, trying to protect people's basements from backing up with it. So that's a little bit of the background. We have targeted a few areas that are specific areas where we've had backups. There's another area we'll probably look at next year to try to eliminate some of the sump pumps. It's not a citywide initiative. That's why there's not a broad announcement of this, because we're trying to hit targeted areas where there are issues in the storm and the sanitary sewer does become overloaded. So that's a little bit of the background. Again, as far as the code, there's an awful lot of latitude as how it can be addressed. And we've, again, tried to do that through appointments and talking with people individually. And Jim Fickrell, the superintendent, has been spearheading that. And, you know, is trying to meet with the people and trying to find reasonable alternatives for them to manage this problem.
Any responses from council?
We're going to discuss it later on the agenda.
Yeah, no, let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just a question while we're on that, excuse me, on that topic. I understand that the letters went out, offered contact information to reach out to the city to try to schedule an appointment to discuss a solution. So have there been many takers on that, and are those meetings generally productive?
I guess I would defer to Jim.
Yeah, I've been in contact with probably 15 residents so far, and 4 of those are plumbed into the sanitary. And the last I knew, all 4 of them have already contacted the plumber, and they're going to take care of the problem.
Thank you.
Bob, did you want to jump on this now, or did you want to delay? Because I think the thought is fresh now. Did you want to cover your item, which is the sump pump discharges? Or?
I mean, I can cover it in the proper place on the agenda. Just so
Okay.
wait, then we can
Okay, we'll
discuss
cover
it.
it's his agenda, it's his item, so we'll let him cover it. Thank you.
Are there grants out there to help for the cost?
I'm not aware of anything that would be specific to this. Typically what you will find for grant monies are for high studies, as they're referred to, at which point the municipality will go out and do smoke tests, various checks to find these types of connections, and then that results into the moving forward with trying to get it removed. We do, as a matter of course, with new construction, we do try to provide storm sewer connections for people to tie into. Summit Street, we tried to make those connections available. The most recent work on Elm Street, there were some connections made available so that we can. Again, it's just not always practical to do it, and a new stormwater project down there, of course, would be a significant expenditure.
Any other questions? I have a few, but I'm going to wait till the agenda item comes up. Councilman Bayakowski, is sump pump discharge?
Yes.
You wanted this on the agenda, so.
Yes, I put it on the agenda, and I'll start. I have a list of things, so I think we can get through this fairly quick. One of the things that last week I had a couple phone calls right off the bat, and I would have to ask the administration the next time. You send out a letter to an entire street or 2 streets, maybe it'd be best to inform council first, because I was questioning this, and I felt kind of at a loss when the person said, well, don't you have a copy of what they sent out? And I said, no, I don't. So I came down put it on the agenda and then send us out a letter. So that's a pretty important thing, I think. It's information. And some of the people, I've had contact with quite a few people, Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, this morning, and this afternoon. Some people felt threatened. They felt like this was a strong arm thing. I think a lot of it's a lack of information, and also just a feeling of being pushed around. One of the things that came up, and I heard it from several people, that one of the city employees told them, you don't have to worry about a thing your grandfather did, and this was within the last several years. And, you know, I've read the grandfather clause, and it's ambiguous. I mean, right off the bat, it says you are illegally doing something and all that, and it says by the date, but then again, too, the code was reenacted in 1994 and amended and all that, so it could be interpreted as that. But man, I have to ask you, is that sewer line big enough to handle the apartments at the VA, the PTSD center, which just opened last year, and the nursing home? Is all that running down my field?
No, I don't believe it is. The nursing home is connected into the Richmond Avenue sewer, which I believe heads to, and obviously I don't have the maps right directly in front of me, but which heads to the east. The west of the Redfield Parkway lift station, the West Main pump station, collects areas of the Redfield Parkway, as well as Bogue Avenue, and some of the back part of the Batavia Downs. The main grandstand, things of that nature, most of that does not go directly into the Redfield Parkway pump station. Some of the concerns that were brought up as far as some of the storm sewer connections are valid points that need to be considered, but those are things that are reviewed as part of the building permit. For example, again, if we go back in time, the racetrack where Tops is and a lot of those areas were all parking lot back in the day. When Tops was built, of course, there is a detention area that was constructed to manage the storm water that does not come back into anywhere near the Redfield drainage system. And in fact, some of it goes across Lewiston Road, it goes out into the town. The same can be said for the nursing home. There's a large detention area out in front of the nursing home to manage that storm sewer, and the VA hospital has its own storm sewer system, catch basin system that collects into that, so that is not connected into the sanitary part, is not connected in. And again, the point being here is that during a normal daylight today, it is not an issue. It is the high water rain events which is indicative of rainwater, surface water entering into the sanitary sewer system, not just a normal sanitary flow, if I answer your question. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you're saying then the sewage from the VA, all of the additions there does not go down Redfield?
I would verify that. I just don't have the map right in front of me to give you the exact. I believe that heads down to the east through a different collector system, but I will verify that.
The ditch on the west side of Redfield by Tops, that big ditch,
Yes.
Is that privately owned?
That is privately owned by Tops and was a requirement of their construction back in circa 1989.
My thought there was that possibly people on the west side of Redfield could have their sump pumps go into that.
Again, we look to see where there's areas to drain stuff off, and I don't know that would be a problem.
Okay. This morning I spoke with Mr. Nelson Baker, who a lot of us know, and he enlightened me on a lot of things. And one of the things he's informed me of is that they have springs in that area towards Main Street. And he said when he did some work on his house, the water table was about 4 feet below the surface. And a lot of people from Redfield know that Nelson wanted to put a well in. He thought he could drain the water down, so he went down 20 feet. And the water started bubbling up. So he said, well, we'll go down 50 feet. And more water bubbled up, and I think he went like to 80 feet. But now he had a gusher on his hand, so that didn't work. But he said basically his basement is like a boat. It's just sitting in water year round. He says you can dig down and you hit water. So I think there's some serious problems. and I'm sure you're fully aware of it, you guys have seen it, but I think one of the big things is communication, just, we need to see what we can do in this neighborhood.
Yeah, obviously, in hindsight, I did not notify council as promptly as I should have. However, again, we're not trying to be draconian about it. We've asked people to make an appointment so we can talk to them face to face. We're not trying to strong arm anybody. We're not trying to, be overly pushy. We're trying to see what, how many are connected, what the connections are, and if there's other alternatives to get that out of the system. If there's virtually no other reasonable solution, it can remain, but we try to find some of those other reasonable solutions. Again, if we can eliminate just a percentage of that, might eliminate an awful lot of the problems.
Right. And the other thing I had was the Owenses, I remember a few years ago when the whole front yard was dug up and they put in this pipe in a bubbler system. Who told them they had to do that?
I don't know who told me they had to. Bubbler systems are a common way of dealing with that. There are, I would hazard a guess as to how many there are in the city, but it's not an uncommon solution to a storm drain or a sump pump drain. Is that you create usually a gravel well that your bubbler system goes into and then lets it slowly dissipate, or captures an awful lot of it and then reduces the overland flow. So it's a reasonable solution. It's a very common practice that is used for sump pumps, but it's not the only solution. But it can be a tool that's used.
Okay, good. Well, I hope, we start communicating with people and get some of this resolved.
Any questions? I have a few questions. The top of the problem about the track building and additional water, because when they added other buildings on, would they have to apply for runoff and all that kind of studies?
Absolutely. There's a requirement, and typically in urban settings, you cannot increase the amount of runoff that there currently is. So that's where these detention areas are created, things of that nature. If they're seeing surface flooding on the backside of the properties over into the downs, I would tend to believe that's more indicative of their drain being plugged. And again,
There being the downs?
The downs would be my suspicion. So, please contact us. We can make contact with them and see if we can,
Can you put that on your list as to check in there?
Absolutely. I'm virtually certain that there's a catch basin right there. I think I can see in my mind's eye. But it could be as simple as their line's plugged and not aware of it, or choose not to do something with it. More likely they're just not aware of it. But let's see if we can make that a maintenance issue that gets corrected and makes that problem go away and reduces it.
And if I to recap, you did say storm sewer connections are allowed, but only if there's connections to be connected into. It's a costly thing now because you have to dig up the street and make these connections all to the storm sewer, right?
Absolutely. It happens much more commonly if there's a catch basin right in front of your house, but not every house has a catch basin in front of it. You can come into the back side of it, and while it's not inexpensive, it's not cost prohibitive compared to going out into the pavement, into the street, and trying to do a connection. And again, when we do new construction, we do try to make accommodations as best we can. Not every house has a storm sewer in front of it either, especially if there's a hill. Usually it's at the top of the hill, there's no storm sewer. So it's not like the sanitary sewer is virtually in front of every single house. So everyone is somewhat unique. We try to find that right solution. In the backyards of, I believe, Bogue and Redfield, there's an area drain back there that collects some of that and allows that. We might need to make sure that is operating as needed as well.
One other thing I'd like to make reference to is the letter is basically, asking for help up until the point where it says it's no longer allowed, in fact, violation of several different codes and ordinances. So to someone who gets this in the mail, they see the word violation in ordinances and they might think they're in some kind of violation. Jim has only met with 4 people on that street at this point, correct?
I think you said around 15. Only 4 of them were tied into the sanitary. Is that correct, Jim?
Correct. So out of 15 people, only 4 were technically people that needed to change something.
Correct.
And they volunteered to assist in your working the plan out with them.
Correct.
So to the people that spoke today, I guess my request to you is meet with Jim and see if you can help the city and find a mitigation. If not, then you can't do it, you can't do it. But if some of you can help and assist, and there's other ways, a simpler way to fix your problem and give the city a break and relieve some of that pressure on that pump station, you'll help the rest of your neighbors out as well. So it's not, nobody's forcing you to do anything. I guess maybe the wording of the letter could have been more like, we need your help, can you please call us so we can help you out? Maybe would have been less aggressive than it's no longer allowed in federal violation. But I see where you're going with it, and it's just, I think it was just misunderstood.
Yeah, unfortunately, when we're referencing ordinances and codes, we have to use the language that's there, and it's not always as sunny as a face-to-face conversation happens when you call and make an appointment with us, and we can try to explain that as best we can. And again, ultimately, we're trying to protect the residents, because if there's a failure in that system, the system backs up, it comes up in the
Main
basements.
Street upwards, and those are.
Yeah. And the people with the lowest basements will see that first.
So yes, apparently there is a grandfather clause, but at the same token, you can help your neighbor out by at least listening to Mr. Ficarella and try to mitigate the problem. There might be a cost-effective way to do it. If you can't, you can't. I understand that. If you can, that helps your neighbor, it helps the city out, and it worked really well on Bank Street. And why did Bank Street, I don't recall Bank Street having, he was upset, was there?
I don't, you know, we followed the same route. We went and just made appointments with people and spoke to them. We didn't get, you know, a lot of reaction back from it. And again, the letter that was sent out is, you know, we essentially copied a letter that the town of Batavia sent out to all the residents a few years ago, you know, for really the same reason.
So we apologize for any misunderstanding, but contact Mr. Ficarella, and he'll schedule an appointment with you and at least talk to you on a one-to-one basis, and you can always talk to Matt.
Yeah, I have two more things. Is that storm sewer gravity feed to the creek?
Yes, it's gravity fed.
So I think there's where one of the bigger problems is. There's so much water in that area, especially with springs and water cables 4 feet below the surface, that we may have to look at doing something with the storm sewer system itself, possibly. Now, when the creek is at a high water level, what happens?
Yeah, during high water level events, you know, quite often there's other issues that go along with that. You know, obviously it gets exacerbated on the south side over in the flood areas, more in particular, especially you get manholes underwater, the water's just pouring into the sanitary sewer system. And unfortunately, sometimes people's basements are flooding with that as well. So we're trying to, you know, mitigate the issues with the rain events, the snow melt events, the high water flood events. You know, there may not be a full solution to that.
The other thing I have, I spoke with one of the residents there, and he said they had some old infrastructure that went back to when it was a county park. And there was a sewer line, I believe, and they said they came and capped it off in his backyard, or someplace in the vicinity of his backyard. And I'm just curious how much old infrastructure might still be there causing some of the problems.
Yeah, I believe the area, I suspect it's one I'm aware of. I think it was some type of an old connection. It actually goes into a catch basin in that area. That kind of there's a little welded plate in the back corner of some people's property that collects you know, surface water. But as you know, in my career here, anytime that you're digging in the city, you can come across all kinds of old infrastructure that's been replaced and maybe partially, you know, still open in some way, shape, or form, and that, but we try to correct those as we come across them.
So Brentfield's on the radar. You understand the people's concern, and Vogue as well. So you're gonna be working on a solution over the next several months to figure out what's going on over there. Many different solutions that might have to occur before that's fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're trying to find reasonable solutions, the low-hanging fruit, if you will. We're trying not to, you know, use draconian measures or make people expend, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to go out into a street. We're trying to find those low-cost options that also remove some of this clean surface water from the sanitary sewer system.
So many little projects can end up to be solving the big problem in a sense.
Absolutely, and again, as the letter shows, you take, you know, one little sump pump's not a lot, but all of a sudden, you know, those two streets, I think there's about 100 properties. If you have 60 sump pumps, it's an awful lot of water in a short period of time.
Yep. Any other questions?
Jim, did you happen to go to Batavia Downs to see that drain yet?
I did not.
would you please do that tomorrow? I'm quite sure they will allow you to check on that and see if possibly it's clogged. If it is, that might be the problem. I don't know.
I definitely will go tomorrow.
I mean,
Thank
that's a
you.
start, that's a start, I mean, that might be one of the low hanging fruit, might be just a couple of drains that need to be cleaned out.
We'll make contact with
The weather's getting nice now, so.
Yeah. We'll make contact with people at Batavia Downs and coordinate that. You know, again, we'll try to make sure they're a good neighbor.
Now, if people have a concern or a flooding incident or something changes in their property, do you want them to call who?
On the private side, the best place to start is with the inspection bureau. And, you know, from there, again, they're located in the same bureau with the rest of the public works. If it goes something on the public side, in the street side, you know, we can make those connections and connect the dots for them the best we can. But start, if they call the public.
Inspection, and then say, I never had flooding in my backyard, now I'm having it, that would be the inspection call.
Correct. And again, if it goes somewhere else, we will make sure that the correct departments are brought into that conversation.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
Yeah, so in conclusion, man, words, all else fails, then you're still going to honor the grandfather clause, 147.14.
I don't know if I'd use the grandfather clause, but the code allows for that connection to remain if there are no other reasonable alternatives.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So, any other questions or concerns? Okay, if, you're going to take us into executive session.